Hello, wonderful souls. I'm Sally, and you are listening to Reverse Reset Restore, the podcast where we embrace the extraordinary potential of our minds to transform our lives, reversing limiting beliefs, resetting our thoughts, and restoring our connection to ourselves. Change comes from within. Talk about labels. No, not the designer kind like Versace or Louis Vuitton or Prada, or the labels associated with expensive cars like Lamborghinis and Teslas and Porsches. And we'll gloss over the labels life has given us. Daughter, wife, mother, niece, sister, girlfriend. Or perhaps our work labels. Doctor, judge, boss, colleague, teacher, writer, singer, waitress, etc. Today, our exploration takes us into the subtle territory of self-imposed labels, the ones we wear within the corridors of our minds. Those labels, often assumed with the best of intentions, the ones we think are helpful or strong, but are sometimes misplaced judgment or expectations, or even self-sabotaging traits that can carry a weight we may not even have fully comprehended. Whether we've bestowed upon ourselves the mantle of people pleaser or perfectionist, these seemingly innocent descriptors may harbour a power that shapes our thoughts, actions, and ultimately the course of our lives. FYI, this episode was originally written as a presentation for International Women's Day, which had the theme for the year being Inspire Inclusion, which I may refer to infrequently throughout this discussion. I presented this within the context of International Women's Day, and it's a discussion I feel really passionate about, the labels that we associate with ourselves. There is a prevalence of self-sabotaging labels, dressed up as traits to be proud of and to aspire to. And by ascribing them to ourselves, we run the risk of limiting our personal growth and believing that our worth and our contributions are defined by these titles. So let's unravel the layers of these self-ascribed identities, questioning whether they empower or confine us, and look at ways we can cultivate a positive self-perception for our individual and collective well-being. Beyond the societal roles that often define us lies the convoluted mess, or perhaps depending on your current mindset, a rich tapestry, shall we say, of our own self-identification. The labels we choose, consciously or otherwise, can significantly shape our experiences. Whether it's the people pleaser or the perfectionist, how their self-ascribed monikers hold a peculiar power. A bit later on in the episode, I'm going to take you through 12 labels we commonly assign ourselves that we either recognize to be self-sabotaging thoughts and behaviors or praise ourselves for enacting in all areas of our lives. These labels can be damaging, not just to us, but to those around us. But before we get to them, perhaps our starting point should be in understanding self-sabotaging labels. Question number 1. What drives us to identify with a certain self-assigned label? Labels come from everywhere. They are a man-made construct that we can't avoid and can't ignore. There's literally no way to escape them. They are a part of life. Even our names are a label, right? The Turner Syndrome Foundation has this to say: labels reflect how people think about others and themselves. They not only influence how a personal identity is created, but also allow for recognition that others have different qualities. They aid people in understanding differences in needs, cultures, and personalities. And so it's not inherently good or bad that we have labels. They can work really well for us in helping understand and appreciate our differences and our similarities. But what we're talking about today is those labels that keep us attached to struggling with an identity or suffering under the guise of we ought to be this, that, or the other. Self-sabotaging labels are formed because they reside deep within our psyche. They come from our core beliefs and from the external experiences of the world around us. They can shape our mindset or shift the way we respond to ourselves and everybody else. We use them to trick ourselves into believing these behaviors or attributes are beneficial or that they are us. For example, as a recovering people pleaser, I sometimes really struggle doing this podcast. I spend a lot of time working on the episodes and the social media messages I craft for each one and to create connection with people. And often, because of the medium of the podcast, you can feel very isolated and like you're making no difference at all. I call it screaming into the abyss. The people pleaser in me feels inadequate and useless and unseen, and wonders why I'm doing all this work for very little payoff that I can see. The perfectionist in me believes I must be doing all the wrong things, and if I listen too long to either one of those labels, I can feel myself slipping back into those old feelings of not measuring up and not being good enough. And then the cognitive thought distortions try to swing by and pile on the pity party. It can get pretty messy in this old mind when we cater to our labels or wrap who we think we are up in them. Question number 2. Do the labels we've embraced empower us as individuals or inadvertently contribute to our own limitations and those placed on women in our broader society? Natasha Taskov said, "Titles are prisons of human potential." When we take on a title or a label as part of our identity, it's placing limitations on who we are. We restrict the fullness of who we actually are if we're only identifying as that label, be it critic or procrastinator or idealist or mum or wife or friend. Labels are not only limiting to us as individuals, but they can also hinder the spirit of inclusion in broader contexts of society. Edward W. Said wrote in Culture and Imperialism, "No one today is purely one thing. Labels like Indian or woman or Muslim or American are not more than starting points, which are followed into actual experience for only a moment, are quickly left behind." Imperialism consolidated the mixture of cultures and identities on a global scale. But its worst and most paradoxical gift was to allow people to believe that they were only, mainly, exclusively, white or black or Western or Oriental. Yet just as human beings make their own history, they also make their cultures and ethnic identities. No one can deny the persisting continuities of long traditions, sustained habitations, national languages, and cultural geographies. But there seems no reason except fear and prejudice to keep insisting on their separation and distinctiveness, as if that was all human life was about. Survival, in fact, is about the connections between things. In Eliot's phrase, reality cannot be deprived of the other echoes that inhabit the garden. It is more rewarding and more difficult to think concretely and sympathetically, contributantly about others than only about us. But this also means not trying to rule others, not trying to classify them or put them in hierarchies above all, not constantly reiterating how our culture or country is number one, or not number one for that matter. There is a constrictive force field when we wear, willingly or otherwise, the labels the world has invented, and that we in turn, because of our societal constructs, try to impose upon others. And we've all done this, haven't we? Judge someone for their labels or lack thereof, or where they're from, how they identify. Just go scroll through your Facebook feed right now and you will find critics galore, making assumptions, passing judgments, and holding opinions because of the labels we have constructed. Alan G. Fields wrote in Human Psychology 202, "Understanding how people really think so that you know how to deal with them. Labeling automatically leads to false conclusions and wrong assumptions about others." Labeling not only leads to assumptions and judgments about others, but it creates a separateness or a us versus them mentality, which continues to create chasms and divides. This plays out all the time in whataboutisms, gender divides, and discrimination against differences such as age and abilities and beliefs. David Dark, author of Life's Too Short to Pretend You're Not Religious, wrote this powerful piece about what we do when we focus on our labels and in how, doing so, we can create huge barriers between ourselves and others. He says, people take time, but in our haste, we size them up or cut them down to what we take to be a more manageable size, labeling people instead of trying to hear, understand, or welcome them. And we love our labels as ourselves, even as they don't and can't do justice to the complexity of our own lived lives or anyone else's. It's as if we'll do anything to avoid the burden of having to think twice. He further says, to form an opinion about someone or something is to assert or to believe we've asserted some kind of control. And in the rush to opine, we degrade ourselves and whatever it is we'd like to think we've spoken meaningfully about, and defensively stick to hastily prepared and unconvincing scripts, as others have before us, of radical denial. To me, this speaks to the ways we use our labels to keep us separate from others. They could be seen as a kind of defense mechanism or coping device, or acting as though we are above or beneath others. When we practice this, we keep ourselves small. It's another form of self-sabotage because hurting others really reflects how badly we are hurting inside, how much we think we deserve to be hurt and punished. Question number 3. How do we shed the impact of labels, especially the self-sabotaging labels we're proud of? When we have defined who we are by the labels we wear, it can be very challenging to see ourselves as anything else. Understanding our labels in order to no longer have them as our identity requires us to peel back the layers of our own self-perception. When we can do this, we not only free ourselves from potential constraints, but also pave the way for a more inclusive narrative for those around us. By giving ourselves permission to live more authentically, we give others permission to do the same. The best leaders always lead by example, and we can be a leader for others when we lead for ourselves. We see what happens when we tightly clutch at our labels. As Craig D. Lansborough put it, my insecurities demand that I put you in a box that you were not created for, so that I might live the ignorant life I was not created for. It's easier to just stick with our self-proclaimed labels, or the ones the world assigns to us. It is. It requires very little effort on our part to stick with the status quo. But when we do this, we are not showing up for ourselves or those in our sphere. We do ourselves a deep disservice holding on to our limiting beliefs and prevent growth when we choose our labels as our identity. And we've all done and are doing this. I know I'm still falling into those false labels that I thought were me at times. This stuff is hard, and it requires commitment and effort and a willingness to find within you your own authentic power. The you that is not trapped by these social constructs. The being that can overcome your limiting beliefs and achieve success that comes with no titles attached. And we get there by shifting the narratives and by challenging our self-perception with more positive language on the labels we do wear. I'm going to walk through 12 self-sabotaging labels. Some of them are subtle and ingrained in our self-perception, which may have been hindering our personal growth and well-being. We'll look at each one and how we can flip the script and turn them into ones that empower personal growth. Number 1. You've heard me mention it a few times now, perfectionist. If you strive for perfection, you're not alone. A study published in Psychological Bulletin involving over 41,000 individuals revealed that perfectionism is on the rise. Now, this is partly due to the comparisons fostered by social media, the good old keeping up with the Joneses, or in today's reality, keeping up with the Kardashians. There's also competitive environments prevalent in academia and the workforce that fosters this need to be seen as perfect. while striving for excellence such as setting high standards and pursuing goals diligently is commendable, the relentless pursuit of flawlessness and the fear of making mistakes or disappointing others can lead to adverse outcomes for the perfectionist. Research conducted by York St. John University, spanning 43 studies over 2 decades, indicates that perfectionism is strongly associated with burnout, depression, anxiety, and even mortality. So, how about we flip the script to becoming an embracer of imperfection? Embracing imperfection and recognizing that mistakes are a natural part of life and learning and growth, and that they will happen is an important way to learn to let go of your perfectionist label. Po body's nerfect, as the character Eleanor on the show The Good Place reminds us. Don't be so hard on yourself when you make a mistake, no matter how big or small, especially in the realms of our jobs. You are not gonna get it right all the time. Get used to it. Beating yourself up all the time over any perceived mistakes or actual mistakes is a self-sabotaging tactic. Protect your mental and physical well-being by removing this label, especially if you wear it like a badge of honor or some form of one-upmanship over others. As my mum says, take off your cape, you're not Superman. Number 2, another one that I've been talking a lot about, people pleaser, aka self-sacrificing behavior. Constantly prioritizing other people's needs over one's own can lead to various negative consequences. Neglecting personal self-care, including hygiene, appearance, and mental or physical health, becomes common as individuals devote all their time and energy into helping other people. This neglect can eventually result in resentment, as individuals feel trapped in their role of constantly pleasing others, leading to feelings of anger and frustration. People-pleasing behavior can strain relationships, causing conflicts with partners or friends who may take advantage of their willingness to help. And individuals may experience a loss of identity, becoming disconnected from their own desires and needs, ultimately leading to role conflict and potential harm to others as they prioritize being liked over the well-being of those around them. So, how do we stop being people pleasers? How about we look at becoming self-asserters, prioritizing our personal needs and boundaries while maintaining authentic connections with others? Begin by committing to addressing one need at a time, such as taking short breaks between meetings or allowing time to consider requests instead of answering immediately. Setting clear boundaries is key for the people pleaser becoming a self-asserter. When saying yes to something, establish time limits or deadlines to maintain control over your commitments. Implementing time blocking techniques can also help by allocating specific periods in the day for focused tasks without interruptions. Additionally, practicing saying no tactfully and empathetically in advance can empower individuals to set boundaries confidently and assertively. The sky is not going to fall down just because you've said no to helping someone and you've made yourself a priority. You matter too. Number 3, overthinker. Research indicates that a whopping 73% of individuals aged between 25 and 35 and 52% of people aged between 45 to 55 experience chronic overthinking. While overthinking itself isn't classified as a mental illness, it often coexists with conditions such as depression, anxiety, eating disorders, and substance use disorders. Moreover, individuals dealing with chronic pain or illness may find themselves ruminating negatively about their condition and the healing process. Clinical health psychologist Natalie DiTello notes that overthinking, including worrying and rumination, may falsely appear productive or beneficial, leading some to believe it demonstrates care or prepares them for potential outcomes. However, this habitual over-analysis can be detrimental, disrupting daily life and hindering your decision-making. When overthinking becomes pervasive and prevents action, it can significantly impact well-being, underscoring the importance of addressing and managing these thought patterns effectively. So how do you switch your overthinking habits into becoming a mindful observer? Cultivating mindfulness and focusing on the present moment rather than ruminating on past or future events is beneficial. This includes engaging in regular mindfulness meditation to focus on the present moment without judgment, developing self-compassion to treat yourself kindly when caught in overthinking patterns, and setting boundaries with your thoughts by recognizing they are not a reflection of your identity. Practicing acceptance of uncertainty, engaging in mindfulness activities, and fostering gratitude can help shift your focus away from overthinking towards a much more peaceful and contented state of mind. Through consistent practice, you can train your mind to observe your experiences with clarity and compassion, leading to greater well-being and mental resilience. Number 4. Individuals experiencing imposter syndrome feel undeserving of success, or they constantly fear exposure as a fraud, frequently doubting their abilities and value, and undermining their confidence despite clear evidence of their accomplishments, skills, and credentials. I could not have written a more about me paragraph if I had tried. It's normal for us to feel like an imposter at some point in our lives. Unless, of course, you are a narcissist or have very low emotional intelligence. This persistent questioning often triggers anxiety and depression, impairing performance in various domains such as academics, work, social interactions, and even job interviews. So let's reframe the idea of being an imposter to a self-acceptor. While these feelings may become chronic and debilitating for some individuals, for many, imposter syndrome thoughts are a natural aspect of engaging in meaningful endeavors. They stem from a desire to excel and to contribute meaningfully, reflecting a caring attitude and a commitment to doing one's best for others. Acknowledging accomplishments and strengths and accepting that everyone experiences doubts and insecurities helps us shift from wearing the label of an imposter to a self-acceptor. Number 5, procrastinator. Chronic procrastination can prevent individuals from reaching their full potential and realizing their goals. Procrastination is often misunderstood as laziness or poor time management, but research indicates it's primarily a result of ineffective mood management. Studies reveal differences in brain regions associated with threat detection and emotion regulation between chronic procrastinators and non-procrastinators. Avoiding unpleasant tasks, which we've all been guilty of doing, allows individuals to sidestep the negative emotions, which creates a cycle where procrastination becomes a mood-boosting mechanism. Tasks that are emotionally challenging, such as studying or public speaking preparation, are more prone to procrastination, particularly amongst those with low self-esteem or high perfectionism. Procrastination is defined as delaying tasks despite positive negative consequences, affecting about 20% of US adults, according to Joseph Ferrari, a psychology professor at DePaul University. So how do we go from procrastinator to a productivity enthusiast? Transitioning from procrastination to productivity requires a strategic approach and a shift in mindset. Begin by attaching meaning to the task at hand, understanding its importance and relevance to your personal growth or well-being. Ensure your work environment is interruption-free to maintain focus and minimize distractions. Beware of the procrastinating trap, where tidying becomes a delay tactic. Hands up if you've done this before. I know I have. And instead of doing procrastinating, set boundaries to prevent it from consuming valuable time. Employ the PREMAC principle by rewarding yourself with enjoyable activities after completing undesirable tasks. I'll talk more about this principle in the blog, so be sure to check that out. Utilize to-do lists and break tasks into manageable steps to maintain momentum and prevent being overwhelmed. Recognize the warning signs of procrastination and redirect your focus back to the task at hand. Eliminate distractions by identifying and removing sources that divert your attention. Celebrate achievements and practice self-compassion, understanding that setbacks are part of the process and providing yourself with kindness and encouragement to stay motivated and resilient. With patience, perseverance, and self-compassion, you can transform procrastination into productivity and achieve your goals. Number 6, victim mentality. Seeing oneself as a perpetual victim of circumstances can limit personal responsibility and hinder your resilience and your breakthroughs. A victim mentality is characterized by a belief that negative occurrences persistently happen, with individuals perceiving themselves as blameless in these situations. Rooted in learned behavior rather than inherent traits, victim complex stems from a sense of a learned helplessness, where past traumas and experiences create a perception of powerlessness. Those with a victim mentality view the world through a dichotomy of innocence versus adversity, positioning themselves as the innocent party while attributing external factors to negative outcomes. Turn your woe is me into P is me. Personal empowerment advocate. P. Turning victim mentality into becoming your own personal empowerment advocate involves several key steps. Firstly, it's essential to take responsibility for your life and recognize that while circumstances may not be in your control or be your fault, you have the power to respond and affect change. Identifying small actions to improve your situation can build momentum and confidence. Uncovering the hidden payoffs of victimhood and addressing underlying trauma with the help of a therapist can pave the way for healing and growth. Setting clear boundaries by practicing saying no restores a sense of control, while developing self-efficiency through positive affirmations and surrounding yourself with supportive influences reinforces the belief in your ability to succeed. Cultivating self-compassion and practicing kindness towards yourself counteracts negative self-perceptions, allowing you to embrace your worthiness and your potential for a brighter future. Number 7, the martyr. A martyr complex, which is often perceived as selfless, can lead individuals to neglect their own needs in favor of meeting the needs of others, which may lead to burnout and unfulfilled personal goals. Despite their sacrifices, individuals with a martyr complex may find themselves feeling unhappy, and their actions may not necessarily benefit those they aim to help. While not formally diagnosed, the martyr complex describes certain psychological patterns that can manifest in various situations, such as in the workplace or within families. For example, individuals exhibiting martyr tendencies may struggle to trust others to complete tasks, feeling compelled to take on responsibilities themselves. In return, they often seek recognition and praise for their sacrifices, leading to feelings of disappointment and resentment when their efforts go unnoticed. Martyrs are also often people pleasers and perfectionists. To move away from being a martyr, embrace becoming your own self-care advocate. Individuals must first take personal responsibility for their well-being. This involves recognizing that no one else can change their behavior for them and committing to setting boundaries and saying no when necessary, even if it initially elicits negative reactions from others. Seeking therapy can also be beneficial in understanding the underlying reasons for martyr tendencies and learning healthier coping mechanisms. Nurturing oneself through activities that bring genuine joy and fulfillment, independent of external validation, is really essential. Expressing needs directly and setting boundaries are crucial steps in this process, even though they may provoke discomfort or resistance from other people and even from within yourself. Ultimately, being able to balance your personal and altruistic goals to ensure your well-being while still contributing positively to others is possible for the self-care advocate. Realizing that one has choices in how they engage with relationships and prioritizing personal well-being are key to breaking free from the constraints of a martyr complex and fostering a healthier, more fulfilling life. Number 8, the control freak. The need for excessive control can create stress and strain relationships, preventing collaboration and growth. Individuals with a high need for control often exhibit behavior aimed at correcting others and dominating their environment. This need for control may stem from a fear of vulnerability and a desire to avoid being taken advantage of. Control-orientated individuals strive to impose order on perceived chaos, dictate the thoughts and actions of others, and assert dominance in various situations, often displaying traits of perfectionism and obsessive attention to detail. While control tendencies can be advantageous in certain contexts, they may also result from past experiences of disappointment or betrayal, leading individuals to believe that they must rely solely on themselves to achieve desired outcomes. Despite its potential negative impacts, control-oriented behavior is often viewed positively and associated with success, making individuals reluctant to address it proactively. So how do we keep the good qualities of the control freak and dump the rest? By becoming a collaborative partner. To transition from a controlling mindset to one of collaboration and empowerment, several steps can be taken. Firstly, it's crucial to shift focus from managing external circumstances to managing internal responses. This shift, known as secondary control, involves cultivating resilience and tolerance for uncertainty. Next, recognizing the consequences of controlling behavior on relationships and personal well-being is essential. Over-reliance on control can create stress for others and reinforce anxiety, undermining rather than enhancing productivity. Delegating tasks and relinquishing the need for perfection can help break the cycle of control and foster trust in other people's abilities. Identifying the underlying drivers of control, such as the need for certainty and significance, and fostering self-awareness are crucial steps towards change. Reprogramming negative thought patterns and language, improving communication skills, adopting healthier habits, seeking outside perspectives, and embracing growth and self-care practices further contribute to relinquishing control and embracing collaboration and empowerment. By actively engaging in these strategies, you can transform from being control-orientated to becoming effective partners in collaborative. Number 9, the cynic. George Carlin said, "Inside every cynical person, there is a disappointed idealist." Cynicism, often rooted in defensive responses to hurt or anger, can have significant implications for both mental and physical health. Research has linked cynicism to conditions such as depression, heart disease, cancer, and can even contribute to lower income. Opting for a cynical outlook may stem from feelings of vulnerability, leading individuals to adopt a defensive posture towards the world. Cynicism is defense. This defensive stance not only affects how individuals perceive themselves, but also colors their interactions with others, often breeding suspicion and negativity. Cynicism can create a distorted lens through which individuals view the world, fostering an us versus them mentality that overlooks the joys in life and undermines compassion towards other people's struggles. Breaking free from cynicism involves addressing underlying emotions, practicing self-compassion, and cultivating a more optimistic outlook to foster healthier relationships and your overall well-being. So to transition from being a cynic to an optimist, it's essential to embrace actively optimistic practices that counteract the negativity and foster a brighter outlook on life. Scientists recommend techniques such as envisioning your best possible future, smiling more, and surprising others with kindness. By writing down achievable aspirations and engaging in random acts of kindness, you can gradually shift your mindset towards optimism. Additionally, cultivating that gratitude by surrounding yourself with positive influences, challenging those negative thought patterns, prioritizing self-care, and focusing on personal growth are powerful strategies for combating cynicism and nurturing a more optimistic perspective. By implementing these practices consistently, you can overcome cynicism and embrace a more positive and fulfilling way of life. Number 10, the self-doubter. Self-doubt is a pervasive feeling of being inadequate that can undermine even the most accomplished of people. It's that nagging thought that despite your successes, you're not quite good enough, leading to doubts about your worth as a person and what you deserve. This insidious self-doubt corrodes confidence, fostering a sense of isolation and a constant fear of being exposed as a fraud. Stemming from uncertainty about one's identity and abilities, self-doubt often surfaces in situations requiring risk or stepping outside your comfort zone. Maybe that's embarking on a first date or pursuing a new job opportunity. While a certain level of self-doubt can be healthy, prompting growth and skill development, excessive self-doubt is what we're talking about here, and that can lead to indecision and obviously self-criticism, hindering your personal advancement and feeling good about yourself. Anxiety and overthinking, fear of failure, and past trauma are common triggers of self-doubt, perpetuating the cycle of negative thoughts and reinforcing these feelings of unworthiness. Seeking support from mental health professionals can be crucial in addressing and overcoming these deeply rooted feelings that may arise from past traumas or negative life experiences or just in general, not backing yourself. Constantly questioning your ability and doubting your personal worth just continues to hinder confidence in your success. So we want to turn our self-doubt to self-confidence. Turning self-doubts to self-confidence begins with acknowledging and embracing doubt as a natural part of the human experience. Rather than berating yourself for feeling uncertain, recognize that self-doubt serves as a protective function, aiming to shield you from potential embarrassment or failure or regret. Dr. Kristen Neff advises against harshly criticizing yourself and instead suggests befriending your inner critic, understanding its intent to keep you safe. Challenging self-doubt involves questioning the validity of your doubts and considering the possibility of the opposite being true. By doubting your doubts, you open yourself up to new possibilities and opportunities for growth. Naming and addressing your inner critic allows you to separate your true identity from fear-driven thoughts, empowering you to take control of your narrative. Establishing a clear and compelling purpose or mission can provide the motivation needed to overcome doubts and pursue your goals despite the inherent risks. Surrounding yourself with a supportive community that encourages and uplifts you reinforces your confidence and helps counteract self-doubt. Lastly, building self-confidence is an ongoing process. It doesn't happen overnight. It requires consistent practice and courage. By setting achievable goals, practicing self-assured body language, acknowledging your positive qualities, and seeking professional support when needed, you can gradually diminish self-doubt's control on your life and cultivate greater confidence in yourself. Number 11, the comparison seeker. Comparing ourselves to others is common and it's normal, but it can be a damaging habit that leads to feelings of being inadequate and thus stealing joy from our lives. This tendency is fueled by unfair comparisons, robbing us of precious time and undermining our uniqueness and our own achievements. When we measure ourselves against others, we risk losing our sense of self-worth. We risk our pride, our dignity, our passion, and we tend to find that a lack of joy and a growing resentment soon follows. Ultimately, comparison shifts our focus away from our own lives and our own potential, preventing us from finding true fulfillment because we're so caught up on what other people are doing and what we perceive are our failing. Recognizing the pitfalls of comparison can help us break free from its grip and cultivate a more positive and self-affirming mindset. To transition from constantly comparing yourself to others to embracing this sense of self-appreciation, it's crucial to recognize the damaging influence of comparing yourself to others and consciously work to eliminate it from your mindset. Focus on your own successes and your unique abilities. Find motivation in your past achievements to pursue further growth. Shift your desires away from societal definitions of success and towards greater values like love, humility, empathy. Instead of competing with others, appreciate their contributions and collaborate for mutual benefit. Practice gratitude regularly to acknowledge the positives in your life, and remember that nobody is perfect. Take breaks from comparing yourself to others by changing your surroundings. Seek inspiration without comparing yourself to others. Get the hint here? Stop comparing who you are to everyone else. Compare your progress only with yourself. Celebrate who you are and your personal journey. Embrace your imperfection. Let go of the pursuit of perfection and trying to be like somebody else. Be the best version of you that you can be. And number 12, fearful avoider. The fearful avoidant makes up about 2% of the overall population, and this is an insecure attachment style that generally comes out of an unconscious strategy to survive very early childhood trauma. And we're talking trauma that's happened around the ages of 1 to 2. I'm not going to go into too much detail here about the attachment style, but if you're interested, go down the Google rabbit hole because it is a very interesting sort of thing to read through these different attachment styles. Fearful avoidance, though varying in their tendencies towards dismissive or anxious attachment, share common traits shaped by their unique experiences. The fearful avoidant possesses distinctive characteristics in which they may have developed hypervigilance as a survival mechanism. This is enabling them to become adept at reading people. But this heightened sensitivity to social cues, which stems from the need to anticipate and navigate unpredictable situations, consequently makes it more challenging for people who are fearful avoidants to really feel like they can participate in other people's lives or even in their own. To shift from a fearful avoidant to become a bold risk taker is asking quite a lot. Learning to transition from being the fearful avoidant to a bold risk taker involves embracing discomfort and uncertainty. You want to start by challenging your fears gradually, taking small steps outside your comfort zone. Practice mindfulness to observe your thoughts and emotions without judgment, allowing you to understand and manage those thoughts and those feelings much better. Set achievable goals that push you just ever so slightly beyond your current limits, beyond your current comfort zone. Celebrating each success, no matter how small. Surround yourself with supportive individuals who encourage and inspire you to take risks. Safe risks, but risks nonetheless. Cultivate self-compassion, recognizing that setbacks are a part of the learning process. No one is going to get something perfect from the very first get-go. We're all learning and growing and failing and falling every time we take up something new. It is part of being human. It is part of the learning process. Over time, as you gain confidence in your ability to navigate uncertainties, you'll find that you're increasingly comfortable with taking bolder risks and embracing new opportunities. Did you recognize any of these 12 self-sabotaging labels in your own life? As I was working through this list, there were a few that actually surprised me when I realized that I have been a bit of a practicing cynic or a control freak, and I have definitely played the martyr on a number of occasions. In fact, I know that there have been times in my life when I have displayed all of these self-sabotaging behaviors at some point or another, and that they can magically appear when the conditions are just right. The reality is that most of these labels are going to be something that we can identify with on a personal level at some point. The problem is when they become the label that we have assigned ourselves repeatedly over and over and over as part of who we think we are. So escaping these labels can be a significant challenge, but it is essential to remember that they do not define who we are. They are things we might do or think or even believe, but they are not actually us. Just as we might get caught up in some sort of identity with the clothes we wear or the music we listen to and the places we travel, none of those things are us. We are much more than the stuff we have or the labels we wear or what we believe about ourselves. We're much more complex and multifaceted than the labels we may temporarily adopt. Embracing the transformative power of shedding self-sabotaging labels is a journey that requires courage and commitment. It's tempting to cling to the familiar narratives that define us, whether self-proclaimed or imposed by society. Yet in so doing, we deprive ourselves of the opportunity for growth and authenticity. By holding onto limiting beliefs and identifying solely with these labels, we undermine our potential and hinder our progress. I, like many people, have found myself trapped in the confines of these false identities, realizing the weight they carry and the limitations they impose. However, breaking free from these constraints demands resilience and a willingness to challenge our perceptions. It entails embracing our inherent power and recognizing that our true identity transcends any societal construct. By shifting the narratives and reframing our self-perception with more empowering language, with more empowering labels, since we won't be able to get away from them completely, we can liberate ourselves from the shackles of self-sabotage. This journey towards self-discovery and empowerment is going to require dedication and effort. But believe me, the rewards are immeasurable. It leads us to a place where success is defined not by titles or labels that we think that we've created for ourselves, but by the authenticity and the resilience of our spirit. As we close out this episode, I want to encourage you to courageously confront and challenge the self-sabotaging labels that confine you. Your worth transcends these limitations. Let this episode be a call to action for each of us to embark on a journey of introspection, embracing our inherent strengths, creating a world where our worth is not based on the labels we assign ourselves or others assign ourselves or we assign other people or the events that happen to us. If you identified strongly with any of the self-sabotaging labels mentioned here, let me know. And let me know if you agree with the alternative types of labels that I provided. Could adopting a different type of label, one that expands your world, bring you healing? Could it change the relationships you have with the people in your life? Could it be the difference between how you respond to your experiences in your situation? Could you learn to be more loving, kinder, and empathetic towards yourself? If you were to let go of the labels, who are you really? Do you even know? I've used a number of quotes throughout this episode, and as always, I will sign off with a final one. I encourage you to reflect on what Steve Maraboli says in his book, Unapologetically You, Reflections on Life and the Human Experience. What he says here is in relation to events or experiences, but I think it easily applies to the self-sabotaging labels we may place on ourselves as well. By switching the labels we assign ourselves, we can see from a new perspective, and that can be exactly what we need to do to let go of the labels we've so tightly held on to as though they were our very essence. He says, sometimes letting go is simply changing the labels you place on an event, looking at the same event with fresh